Welcome. You're listening to Literacy Now, the official podcast for the nonprofit organization Parents for Reading Justice, and I am your host, Brett Tingley. This episode is sponsored by IMSE, the Institute for Multisensory Education. With a deep commitment to transforming literacy outcomes for all students for over 25 years, IMSE provides effective structured literacy, professional development, and curriculum. IMSE equips educators with literacy knowledge, a complete set of classroom tools, teacher guides, lesson plans, digital resources, and implementation support to ensure all students learn to read. Rooted in the science of reading and the Orton-Gillingham methodology, IMSE's programs are explicit, systematic, sequential, and cumulative, guiding educators nationwide toward proficient literacy outcomes. Visit imse.com, that's imse.com, to join the growing community of educators making the IMSE impact. Welcome, everyone. We are very excited to have with us today Mindy Patrick, and she is the co-founder of the Olentangy Dyslexia Network. And we have been friends for a long time, and I adore her, and I'm so happy that she is going to give us some time today to tell you all about what she's been doing. So would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and how you became involved in this really, really important work?
Well, sure. Well, let me start with saying thanks for having me. I'm excited. I'm always willing and wanting to help spread the word. And this is our logo.
Oh, yeah.
Olentangy Dyslexia Network. And so I am a mom of two, and my youngest child has dyslexia. And so I've went on to say the cause kind of picks you. So if somebody would have said to me 20 years ago, oh, you're going to advocate for kids across Ohio that have reading disabilities, I would have said, why? But it hit really close to home. And so the cause kind of came to me. So it happened very organically. And so that's how I got drawn into it. I knew something was off pretty early. You know, you can see the gears turning, but they're not catching. And I knew I had a bright child, but when school started, you know, he wasn't, I slept a lot of it off to being a boy. My older child is a girl, and she was reading chapter books by the end of kindergarten. My son, who's dyslexic, you know, we would turn a page and he never saw the word and before. He struggled with and, the, you know, all those connecting sight words that they're working really hard on those early days of school. And so I knew something was off. I wasn't sure what. I knew there was dyslexia in my family, but all the dyslexics in my family were math geniuses. So my son struggled with math as well. So I was like, well, probably isn't dyslexia, it's something else. So that kind of started the search and the struggles with how to get your student evaluated, and for people to admit that there was a legitimate barrier there.
One of the things that we found was that the school district originally told you what you said about a boy. You know, boys take a little bit longer, or he'll grow out of that, or maybe you should have read to him more. And that whole idea that the district doesn't know much about dyslexia either. Was that surprising to you?
It was surprising. Even in preschool, I knew something was wrong in preschool. I had him, you know, he was late to speak. I had his speech evaluated twice through the districts. You know, I started in Michigan, had him evaluated there. They're like, no, he's a little on the lower end, but a lot of these are developmental, and he's not at the age. Like, who would have known that pronouncing the letter Z isn't supposedly mastered until the age of 8? Well, I don't know too many 4 or 5-year-olds that can't say the word zebra. So, you know, they would excuse things for developmental. He's a boy. They just want to play. and have fun, and he doesn't want to sit and focus on, writing his name or the colors, So I questioned it, but by the age of 3, I knew something was just not clicking.
Yeah. Well, I just meant that it took me a while to realize that my district didn't know very much about dyslexia or really how children learn to read in general. And so they kind of spent some time essentially blaming us
Hmm.
for not reading enough or feeding vegetables or my child for not trying. And so that became
Right.
that was like a double whammy. That was disappointing.
I would say that it was a softer blow, and just excuse to boys will be boys. And, and in the signs were there, but I think even then the people that were evaluating his speech, they weren't aware to be looking for that. And that's one of the early signs of dyslexia is speech delay and trouble speaking. And so that was there pretty early on. I would have been a great candidate for our preschool. My son would have for the preschool program, and he was not recommended for that. And then when we started kindergarten, that's where the blame came into play. We did that evaluation and how low he was, and they hadn't seen a student that far behind. And I was like, really? Because they took him to be evaluated last year, and you didn't recommend him for your preschool program. And then we have a kind of somewhat unique kindergarten schedule where our kids go either Monday, Wednesday, Friday one week, and the other group goes Tuesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So they're not in school every day, and but they can recommend students that need more support and help and are further behind for everyday kindergarten. So he wasn't recommended for that either. So those are the first two. You're telling me he's really low and behind in his developmental markers, but yet you're not offering any kind of solution to remedy that.
Yeah. Well, and I just want parents to know, do trust your gut. And if you think there's something wrong, even if your district tells you, they'll grow out of it, everything's fine. This is why we want to talk to you. This is why this interview with you is so important. There may be something wrong. And the earlier you can get your kid really good reading instruction, the more malleable their brain is, their neuroplasticity is higher, and you can get them help before it causes any of the social emotional damage
Yes.
that can happen. So don't necessarily listen to your district if they say they'll grow out of it. Begin this learning journey. Take our online course, read Sally Shaywitz's book, Overcoming Dyslexia, form a parent group, and start to figure this out. But so how did you ultimately, first what we say is get your kid help first. How
Absolutely.
did you get your child the help that they needed to start reading?
Well, and this is a place where I think parent support groups are really key because I knew something was wrong. We were also going through, my husband has autoimmune disease, so we were in the midst of that diagnosis. So most energy was focused there. But fortunately for me, my stepdad was in town, and he's great with kids, and he would play with Mason, and he could see something was a little off. And my husband, I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, but he was like, just calm down, Mindy. You think something's got to be wrong with everything. And my stepdad, who's not a meddler, pulled me aside and said, something's there. Keep looking. So that encouragement, I think, was the game changer in timing for everything. And so, as a parent group, that's one of the things we can provide is validation to concerns, right? So I kept on my path. I kept questioning. Ultimately, what it took was for me to get any type of remedy in any timely manner, we had to do an outside evaluation. We worked with the school a little bit. Even at the time, the school psychologist said to me, "We'll get there, but if you want to get there this year, this will get you there this year, because the process and, the things they roll out and the time that it takes. And at the time it was, dyslexia was still kind of a shamed word. So we looked outside and we got a private evaluation. Yes, my concerns were legitimate. And then there really wasn't too much in the way of services or any that was offered to me. So we went outside of the district. I would pick my son up early from school 3 days a week in the beginning and take him to a private tutor. So we did that. When we did start working with the district, this is the part that I think is so vital for parents to understand, is most of our teachers are trained in whole language, which is like a guessing model to literacy. And I still, to this day, my son is now 18 years old. He will look at a word, he'll look at the first letter, and he'll still kind of guess. And so the earlier you can address that with the student, the less unlearning or unprogramming has to be done for them to go on and be successful learners approaching with a phonics-based curriculum.
Yeah, that's the thing that was so fascinating to realize. At first, I thought that the district and the teachers knew about it. They actually knew how to teach kids to read, and they were just withholding these valuable services from me. But then what I realized was they don't know about it either. They don't know how kids learn to read. They've been kind of sold a bill of goods, just like we have. And in the colleges of education, where this important knowledge should be being taught, are shortchanging all of us. And so you actually, once everybody kind of figures it out, you can be on the same team as your teachers and your district when you're all learning this valuable information, the science of reading. So one thing that you mentioned was how expensive all this stuff is. And, I have heard it's a rich mom's game to get a dyslexic kid. It is. And so that was part of what motivated us to form a parent group, so that families that don't have the resources, the time and money to do this on their own, why shouldn't their kids learn to read? Was that a similar motivation when you began the Olentangy Dyslexia Network? How did that start?
Well, two different questions. There's two answers to that. The Olentangy Dyslexia Network, at first it was just a meeting, right? So there was a meeting about, it was open to the community. Our district publicized it. We had a panel of experts, an advocate, an attorney, people from the International Dyslexia Association of Central Ohio, staff. We had a multitude of people that comprised this panel, including a legislator. And they just had this meeting in one of our high school auditoriums. 300 people showed up. I don't think anybody was prepared. And I think that volume kind of concerned the district. Like, wow, there's this many parents on it, and any time an event is hosted, attendance can be spotty because of sports and extracurriculars and, regular family life. So for that many people to come out, it was a little eye-opening. But my husband and I both went. We sat there and we were like, oh, well, thank goodness we're here in Olentangy and they're addressing it. Like, we felt safe. We felt like they were doing what they needed to help our son go on and be a successful student. And as the months went on and, the lenses were lifted, but circling back to how we formed, because there was such a tremendous presence at that meeting, the lady that started this whole thing, she said, well, let's have another more intimate meeting and we can talk about some specifics. And so she did that. And I showed up to that meeting and there was probably, again, like 60, 80 people there. And she's like, I'd really like to take this to the next level. I would like for us to be a 501c3. And I had done a little bit of work in that realm. And I said, I'll help, and so it just kind of happened really organically. But ultimately, you asked me, why did you get involved? And you also mentioned, and I think this is incredibly important. You have to make sure your own child is okay first. Like you have to put the fire out, and and then you can go to work on repairing the damage. And so we did that. We had to take our son out of the public school system for 2 years. We sent him to a private school that specializes in dyslexia, called Marburn Academy. And when we did that, and seeing how much it was, fortunately, my in-laws were incredibly supportive and helped us with the tuition of that school, or we would have had to have sold our home. So I think, I kept thinking about, what about a single divorced parent? What about inner city? What about people that don't live near a Marburn Academy? What do they do? And I got really angry. I got really, really angry, because it doesn't seem like your position in life should be able to buy you out of a learning disability. So that was my motivating factor. And Ohio had a program that came out called the Third Grade Reading Guarantee, and there were some issues that surrounded that. And ultimately, the students with dyslexia weren't guaranteed the same services as a student that hadn't been identified. So we went to our local state representative, and his assistant in that office was she was a resident of Columbus. Her son attended Columbus Public School. She was single, African-American, working mother. And when we sat down and talked with her, she goes, I think my son has that. And I think I'll never forget her in particular, because here she is, a hardworking parent, just trying to keep things going, working for a legislator. And she didn't know, and she didn't know what to do. She just was frustrated with, his reaction to school. So those were the biggest motivators for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's unconscionable that your zip code should determine whether or not you get to read or not. The
Yes.
other thing that I think is really important to say at this point is that scientific-based or evidence-based reading instruction works for dyslexic kids. In fact, it's critical. They're the canaries in the coal mine. They really need that in order to learn to read. But in this country today, 2/3 of kids are not proficient readers. So our system is not working for the vast majority of children. There are a bunch of kids who we call them curriculum casualties. They don't have dyslexia, but they have to have, the really explicit, like breaking down the code for these kids to learn to read. And so it's not just a kid with a learning disability getting an IEP and having dyslexia. We've got to change this for all the kids, regular education too, so that we have more than 1/3 of our kids who are proficient readers. It's shocking to me. So
it is shocking. It's an epidemic.
I say it is it's the biggest crisis outside of, curing cancer or something. How can anything be more important? Because it is you have to be able to read to access your education. And you have to have an education to access a job in your life. And, and we could talk about statistics in prison. It turns out like 3/4 of the people are in prison are functionally illiterate. We have failed them. They've not learned to read. So what else is there to do? It's just a mess. But anyway, I cannot tell you how happy we are for the work that you're doing and the collaboration that our group and your group have been able to have over the years. One of the things too, we think that when parents come together in a group, they can have much more influence. Can you talk? Has that been your experience?
Absolutely. There's power in numbers, and together people can get a lot more done than individually. And let's talk about it like this. If I'm having a problem and no one else knows about it, and they can remedy me and handle and manage me in a way that takes care of just me, but it's not addressing the core issue that a lot of kids learn the way that my son does. So if you were to fix it at the core, then you're able to impact a ton of kids. And I think that it makes, I've been on the other side, as a Board of Education member, and you, there's so much on the plate. There's so many issues to deal with, and laws are changing and policies, and you really have to address the fire. And so one parent's not a fire, but many parents, that is that's notable. And so I think absolutely, when parents have come together, that it's not going to be like, well, we can just take care of this and it'll go away. No, it needs to be addressed. We did undergo at our school district, we underwent audit from the state of Ohio Department of Education. Again, packed the room. And, parents were like, finally, somebody's looking, we can see. And so that's another thing. When parents come together, you can make some initiatives. And when if you're all making records requests about very specific things, that flags things with the Department of Education. And that is how, attention gets brought to where the need needs to be met.
Yeah. Yeah. We found that we were, it's like a whack-a-mole. You can whack-a-mole
Right.
a bunch of people individually. But when you come together and not just in your district, but your organization, the Olentangy Dyslexia Network is a sister organization with UA
Yes.
Kid under OH Kid, Ohio Kids Identify with Dyslexia. And we've come together to, I think, be really impactful in getting the dyslexia legislation passed, the guidebook passed. We can help elect school board members who hire and fire superintendents and administration. We can elect state school board members, legislators. We do have a lot of power when we come together. Now, one thing that I think is that by organizing professionally, bringing kind of business practices, so having a mission and having officers and, just professionalizing it, I think was also very beneficial because we could kind of keep a focus on where we were going. What is our mission? What is our objectives? Did you have that experience?
We did. I think that it's also important to identify roles within that organization because, I like, for instance, in the beginning, I worked on making us a 501c3. So anything we did, any donations we received would be tax deductible. But more importantly than that, there are some people that are really great having difficult conversations. There are other people that are great with innovative ideas. Like, that was the best advice. And I can't take credit for all of it because we had UA Kid who kind of started the ball rolling and they helped mentor us. And, and we had a little bit different path because we listened to all the advice that we received. And then we went on and we helped other parent groups form. And every scenario is a little different. Ultimately, what has to happen is you need to collaborate and work with the district to remedy the issue. Sometimes it might take an official complaint. Sometimes it's a series of meetings, and who you send into those meetings speaks volumes. You can't have helicopter crazy parents. You have to have people with an agenda.
Yes.
And you have to learn how to separate your personal emotions from the task at hand. So I think organizing in that business type realm, it helps you stay focused on that. And
That's interesting. Yeah, because I hear this a lot when I'm interviewed or when I'm on in a conference, or they'll say parents have a lot of passion. And it's condescending in a way because what they're saying is,
yeah,
you have a lot of emotion and you get upset and they kind of, sometimes you feel like they're waiting for me to like have a crazy, nervous breakdown and then it's
right.
over and then they'll listen to me. But what I say is, no. I may be passionate. Absolutely, I'm passionate. This is really important, but I am methodical. We have our mission. We have our objectives. We are all going to focus on these. But I do think you're right. Pulling your personal issues out when you're talking to the district about the entire district is really critical. You're absolutely right.
And I did often reference my own child because I could speak about his case specifically without violating anybody else's privacy. But it's helpful if you can get permission from other parents. You know, you don't want to crowd the room, but you don't want to go in alone, because when you go to a meeting at a school district, they're going to have there's plenty of departmental heads that might come to that. And so you don't want to feel ambushed, because that puts you in a defensive posture. But so you need to have a few key people that are able to have these conversations, stick to an agenda, give specific examples. I hate to say this, but it's really helpful. Any parent group that I speak with, I say, if you can get a male as part of your negotiating team, it's fantastic, because us women, we get written off as helicopter moms. And we're not being helicopter moms. We're taking our own time to fight for other children. So I hate to say it, but I think men legitimize that.
Well,
maybe that won't be the case one day, but
yeah. No. It's part of the diversity. You want to have different voices in there with you.
Yes.
And this work is taken on, the majority of it, by moms. You are right. So we tried to do the same thing.
Yes.
It's important.
We'll be right back. Parents for Reading Justice is a nonprofit grassroots movement dedicated to ensuring every child learns to read by engaging parents and educators in adopting the science of teaching reading. Please watch our award-winning film, Our Dyslexic Children, take our master class, and to ensure all our services remain free of charge, please consider making a donation today, all at parentsforreadingjustice.org.
What I loved about the Olentangy Dyslexia Network was that I thought you went about making change in a really unique way by stepping up and running for the school board. So can you talk to us about, how that worked out and how you were able to essentially change from within? Like, you went into the power structure. I love that.
I did. It was, a close friend of mine had mentioned it, and I thought, that is crazy. I don't know anything about schools. But then during these conversations, I started to notice that, I come from corporate America, and schools, they're business, but they run differently. And there's a lot of handcuffs that they wear in what they can and cannot do, the resources that they may or may not have. And so I thought, well, for me to be at this table, negotiating how we address this, I feel like I need to learn the business of school. So I got involved. I started going to board meetings, kind of connecting with some of the administrators. And I said it out loud in one of our parent group meetings. I said, I am going to run for the school board. And everybody was so excited. And then I was like, oh my goodness, I'm crazy. And I don't know anything about campaigning. I am not a political person. But I said it out loud. I said it out loud and made a promise to my friends that they needed somebody in this role. And so I ran, and the co-founder of the Dyslexia Network, she knows a thing or two about campaigning. So she really helped me. We actually had two of us to another mother. Yeah. So of the 5 board members, 2 of us were dyslexic parents of dyslexic learners. So a school board only has 2 employees. They have the treasurer and they have the superintendent, but they are the board's employees. And I quickly realized, well, the board president kind of sets the tone of the focus of the year. I mean, unless the board is super cohesive and they're like, we really just want to focus on this. So you know what? I made my focus. And you know what? it changed the culture. I want to say that the Olentangy Dyslexia Network was an officially adopted organization of they adopt PTOs. They come under that umbrella.
Yeah.
So we were the only non-PTO organization that was adopted by the school district. So they did have a little bit of skin in the game. I think that was huge in our collaboration efforts. But it took time to change the culture. And I guess that is what I would want any parent group, looking to start, just to know it takes time. Changing a culture takes time. It's gradual, and you're angry, and legitimately so. This shouldn't be happening. It's 2022. This shouldn't be an issue. But it is. So, it does take time. And when it changes, you could see the sense of pride that came through in Olentangy that they were doing this. They were doing this right. And other districts were looking at them like, wait, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And I think that's incredible. And if I could share with you that we're the fourth largest district in the state of Ohio with over 22,000 students, and the only public school district in the United States that is an accredited Academy of Orton-Gillingham training facility. Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
That is extraordinary. Now say that. So that's in the Agape, or what's the
Agape,
short?
yes. The Academy. Well, I should have written this down because I always have to look
No,
at
that's
it.
fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Academy of Orton-Gillingham practitioners and educators, I believe. And it's, there's training that can be received, but having an accredited program where teachers actually go through and have to do practicum, work with students, that curriculum is supervised, they are mentored and tutored. I like to tell people, it's like, okay, you grew up Catholic. You believe to your core that Jesus Christ is our Savior and Lord. Well, now you're Jewish. He's a prophet. You can't just change. It takes time to wrap your head around a different mindset. And so any program that has a practicum component gives teachers that time to sorry, what you learned, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to totally switch gears. Get that out of your head. That's only effective for people that are naturally intuitive with reading and believe this. So I think that it's crucial that any school district that's, making these changes has practicum in place so it happens organically. And I'll tell you what, other teachers, other classrooms, they want the success story. They want their students as successful as Mrs. Smith's class, and they had higher reading scores. So it's contagious.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, and with OG, the practicum is so important because my understanding is not just to help with the transition of the culture, but just to actually, they've learned all this mind-blowing stuff, that teaching reading is totally different than they thought. And then it gives them a mentor or a coach to show them over a period of time how to actually do this. Don't do this, do this, or here's how to do it. And so it benefits both the teacher and the student.
Well, and I think that, students are identified at all different ages. So, you have to be able, if you're an Orton-Gillingham educator, you have to be able to address a kindergartner at the very beginning or a seventh grader that has a lot of things to undo and, reprogram their brain on how it needs to read. So it takes some talent and some dedication and support. And so, we now at Olentangy, they have a fellow, which is the highest level and means that you can train other educators. But we have the second fellow in training, so they'll have two. And it's something that needs to grow because when you have 1,600 teachers, you need a lot of trainers. So,
Let me clarify that. Your OG is being taught within the district. So you're only teaching teachers in Olentangy. And are you teaching the intervention or the reading specialists, or are you teaching all teachers, like regular ed teachers too?
Well, so that's a great question. First of all, we do provide training to educators that service. So we bring in outside tutors. This is, a large need, and there's not enough trained staff, so they'll bring in teachers and as well as tutors to work with students individually in small group. The training is most of the principals, again, I talked about culture change. Principals hire their staff. And so when there are several principals that they weren't aware of the severity of this issue, but they are, and they don't hire intervention specialists that aren't willing to take this training. Yeah. So it's becoming a prerequisite. I can't say definitively every one of our principals will only hire someone, that's willing to do this training, because they might be hired for a behavioral, something different, but it's a very high priority. And so they start this training and they do their practicum and they get visited in, when they're working with the students in the district. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, so you are trying to teach all of your intervention specialists or your reading specialists OG. Right. That's the goal.
The goal is, but not every, you've got to be passionate about literacy, and not everybody is meant to do this. On a whole, as a district, we have a phonics-based reading curriculum. So I think that's really key, because whether you're identified here or here, you're learning phonically how to read as opposed to guesswork. And so if that's the basic underlying curriculum, you're not doing harm to those that aren't identified right away. So as a district, yes, we're using foundations and doing assessments 3 times a year on kids. So, that to me is key. Then we are training people to specifically address individuals in small groups with dyslexia. It's a big priority.
No, it sounds amazing. And I think it's so commendable that you put the time and energy into, being a school board member. And you were the president of the school board, right? For a while?
I was president for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
The second being the pandemic. And so, I think that really did me in, because, I'm very passionate about literacy, and there really wasn't time to be with so many crises, and, dyslexic kids weren't getting the services they needed at that time. The great thing that came out of it is a lot of our providers started doing Zoom. And I watched my own child as a senior do Zoom from home. He had a tutor in a different building. It worked pretty well. And, so that is a door that was opened with video and technology. They're not spending time traveling from building to building. They can, service more students. And over the summer, there's a lot, my own child had summer services, and it would be like an hour. So for me to have to come home from work to drive him for 1 hour and take him back and go to work, it's so hard on parents. So I have to commend, there's not too many good things I would say about the pandemic, but it did bring a new avenue forward, especially for people that live in very rural areas.
Absolutely. Well, and I was talking to a mother the other day, and she said she was glad, in a way, or a silver lining to the pandemic was that she actually got to see how her student was being taught to read, or really not being taught to read. And so the pandemic gave parents a window into their child's reading instruction And so I think there are a lot of parents out there right now asking, what is going on? And so we would say, start a parent group. And
I would second that. 100%.
well, and even after, like, you can switch the district to the science of reading. If you watch our documentary, it's on our website. It's sort of just encapsulates our story, so you can see that it is possible. And then the online course is there for free to help you learn how to do it. And then I can always help coach people up, but that you really can, help these kids and change this for them. It's really important. So, and then even after you do switch it, what you were saying, a school board, I think that teachers are not getting paid enough. I think they're working like crazy. It's a thankless job. Everybody's on them all the time. And we can help them teach kids how to read. We can get behind them. We can be on the same team. And by focusing everybody's time on reading and literacy, we make it kind of a fire. We're making it something that is a priority for the district to look at and to work on by meeting with them regularly as this parent group. So it's just all good. It's all good.
It is.
Okay, is there any advice I want to close on? I want to give you an opportunity.
Okay.
Is there any advice that you want to leave our audience with?
Couple things, like there is power in numbers. I can't say that enough. And coming together as a parent group, some of my best friends are my fellow ODN. We call the Dyslexia Network ODN. So they are some of my closest friends to this day. So I am grateful for that. And to not know that you're not alone, that's really important. Part of we have a website, and parents will reach out, and I will, I'll call parents back and talk to them, advise them, try to connect them with resources. I just want people to know I have not met a parent that was wrong. You have to trust your gut. If you think there's something wrong, there's something wrong. It might not be exactly what you think, or there might be, like my own student has dyscalculia and dyslexia. So, there was more than one thing we were trying to identify, but trust your gut. Nobody's hoping that their kid has a learning disability, but once there was so much power that came to me and so much more empathy when I knew what it was and I knew the path forward. So trust your gut, follow it. I haven't met a mom that was wrong.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Literacy Now is a podcast designed specifically for parents in our effort to ensure every child learns to read. Parents deserve a seat at the table, and we bring their voices to the fore. We invite you to join the Parents for Reading Justice community on all of our socials, and make sure to visit our website to watch our documentary and to take our masterclass. All of our content is free of charge because every child deserves to learn to read. This episode was brought to you by parentsforreadingjustice.org, produced by Brett Tingley and Keita Mascaro.